And
Professor.
you know, this becomes part of our experience that we never really understand. What happened to African peoples after the Emancipation Proclamation? Where did they go?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to them? There were
it's not one day you a slave and the next day you're free and you can get a job, you can feed your family, you have equal rights. That wasn't the case.
exactly,
Not by a long shot.
no, and in a frightening way, being enslaved on the plantation was better because at least you had an ordered and arranged day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your life
and some semblance of a pseudo protection, but not, you know, not glorifying that at all. But you understand what I'm saying. It's like you're in a more dangerous situation now because you got all of these plantation owners and this entire population that is excruciatingly angry.
Absolutely. And they're hostile.
And very hostile.
And so they created these camps for the newly freed Africans that were like Bantustans of Southern Africa, or like the reservations. They were very much like reservations.
Mm.
And in these reservations, there really was no direction. Now, some were better than others. Let's not, you know, make it seem that, there were some that had formalized schools. There were some that had formalized way of living. There was some where they could practice their trades. There was numbers of different things, but for the most part, this part of our history isn't studied.
Mm-hmm.
And we really have to understand how great we really are from where we came. And that's the cornerstone to the message that I attempt to deliver, is while we also are offended at what happened to us, upset, righteously so, there's also cause for celebration because we are the descendants of those individuals that did whatever they could by any means necessary to ensure that their lives would continue in order to bring our lives forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Molefi Asante, Dr. Asante, in his book his textbook on African-American history called The Journey of Liberation, he records that between 1865, basically the so-called emancipation, and 1870, 14%, and I'm afraid of numbers, but this is the number that he gives us, which it's what he's saying that's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not the number is more or less is a whole nother thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is 14% of previously so-called illiterate people became literate. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about mastering reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'm not just talking about knowing it. I'm talking about mastering it, taking it to the next level. But they also learned foreign language. Some Greek, some Latin, German, French, whatever it was, but they spoke fluently. And where they lived, they used to engage with each other in that language. Talk about African Americans. By 1900, Dr. Asante tells us in his book and in his research that 41% of us were literate.
Mm.
Now, what troubles me about that number is that number is higher than today.
Mm. Mm.
So shouldn't we think there's a plan afoot here to
Mm-hmm.
purposely miseducate us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If with the...
So somebody needs to write the re-miseducation of the Negro.
Oh, absolutely. From a perspective of looking at it from this point.
Mm-hmm. And this is what you talk about in terms of episodic history.
That's right. And that's what episodic history is. And this is one of the fundamental things that as we look at ourselves, our lives, everything about us, we have, even as human beings, we have to move out of the episodic concept. Even to look at us right now, as us right now, 2018. Where did we come from? Who did we come from? Where did they come from? What were their achievements? There were people on the plantation that were more intelligent than the so-called plantation owner. Mm-hmm. There were Africans more skilled than anyone within their county. We don't know that history. That's something, and that's holistic history. Episodic history is we were enslaved. But we don't know the deeper pieces of that experience as a people. And it's something that we're going to have to look at.
You remember I had the conversation with you, I don't know if it was on air or off air, but we talked about, you know, we built this country. And in order to do that, we had to be the best carpenters, architects, doctors, we had to know intellectual property, trademark law. We built this country. We built the White House. You have to have a high level of skill to do that. And now you are, quote unquote, freed. And as you said, you know more, both intellectually as well as skill set and core competency than the plantation owner. And now all of these people who, and we're not even talking about the uneducated whites that weren't plantation owners, that were just laborers. Well, we come out and we're going to out-labor you, we're going to outthink you, we're going to outdo everything. We by the nature of the thing, are superior to the entire workforce. The only thing we didn't have access to were the laws. And as you said, because of our literacy, we were going after that too. So can you imagine the fear? Can you imagine that level of fear that is still manifesting itself right now? Here we are in early part of 2018. That fear is still there.
Absolutely. And with the documentary Race War that is coming out towards the end of the year, that's produced by Jason Black, you're going to hear some of the premier white fragilists or white supremacists tell you things. You're going to be shocked at what you hear them say. You'll be shocked at how they feel.
And how they think currently.
Absolutely.
And this hasn't gone away. You know, people think that we're in some racism, colonialism. No. Those people who voted for the 45th N, that is the core of America. That is the core of America.
We changed, Brother Philippe. They didn't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're looking at the change as if we all did this together. You know, it's like if you have achieved something and there were people that did everything they could to stop you from achieving it. But for some reason you were able to put them in on the side where they could not interrupt you from doing it, and you did it, and after you did it, they take credit for helping you do it. No, right. They didn't help you do it. They just moved out your way so you could do it.
Or you circumvented them. Basically, you went around them.
However it happened.
Yeah.
But they did not say, I'm going to help you do this. No.
Yeah.
I don't speak in absolutes. And I know people like to hear people say, because everybody say, well, I ain't like that. Okay. I'll go with that. I'm not going to argue that point. But what I'm saying is that we're observing our change as if they helped us make the change. John F. Kennedy did nothing really to help us. His back was put up against the wall. He could not. He was the one that called Martin Luther King and told him to call off the March on Washington. And Martin Luther King said, I can't do that because I didn't start this. And that's when they brought in all the actors and the celebrities to be a part of it, to make it seem like it was this wonderful thing. These actors and actresses that you see at the March on Washington, the great majority of them were brought in by the president as a favor to John F. Kennedy. They didn't, this has been done. Dr. Clark's presentation titled "We Are Alone" is something everybody should Google as soon as possible and watch it. Because see, we're waiting on the world. And we have the capacity to do this ourselves. We can do this. In fact, we're in the process of doing it. If we just were aware of what we were doing, we could do it quicker. Because we say, oh my goodness, if I had known this, I would have started this a long time ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of what the Kemetic Wisdom School is about, though.
That is the reason for the Kemetic Wisdom School. And that's why the genius of your development of it is behind the fact that it's about economics with Savvy Sasha. It's about counseling with Onaje Muid and Nzinga Dalila and Jan Marie and Khan Decay as they move through their process. It is the younger generation and the elder generation working together, bringing together these forces. It's about looking at what time it is with Brother Patar's calendar. It's about understanding the real history of African American with David Imhotep.
But it's also about what I really respect about the content that's been produced, particularly by you, is especially in terms of the five minds, emotional intelligence, academic intelligence. It's teaching us how to think and how to process information that we already know and new information coming in, so we can structure it in our neural net so that it becomes the most effective. Part of the problem is that we just take on all this information and knowledge, and it becomes what I call academic entertainment, because you don't activate it. But if you teach a person how to think and how to process the information, whereby they then have the power to activate it regardless of where they are in their life economically, regardless of where they're at socially, regardless of what age they are, that's the real power. And that's going back to move forward. Absolutely. It's going back to our ancestors in the 1800s. It's going back to that 14% literacy rate to 40% literacy rate, so that we can learn how to think and how to move that information into our physical space to create permanent change and epigenetic and a new level of genetic memory, and shut down that miseducation of the Negro.
Absolutely. I used to teach a class, a high school class. I was part of a program where I work with high schoolers, and those that formulated the program saw the relationship I had with freshman students in terms of really trying to work with them to get them to understand. So they gave me the official job of teaching multiple intelligences as my contribution. There was a program on time management taught by a sister lawyer, and she taught a little bit of law. There was arts and crafts. There was a dancing class. So every Saturday for the entire year, this program brought students to a college campus, and all of us taught certain classes. My class was multiple intelligences. And at the end, we always had an open house, great food and, music. And we brought the parents to show what the children had learned. And what I did, my job was to start the year off teaching what multiple intelligences are. The intrapersonal, interpersonal. Then we got into the math and the linguistics and the music, spatial, the visual intelligence and the movement, the kinesthetic. However, when the children did their presentations, I was the only class that nobody saw. Because what I did is I took all of their collective experience for the year And I looked at and we charted where we were as it related to multiple intelligences. So the students that were more self-reflective, their participation dealt with self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for those that were interpersonal, they were the MCs.
Mm-hmm.
For the ones that were into music, they developed the music for it. You know, for the ones that were kinesthetic, they were the ones that moved around and did whatever. They were like the ushers.
Mm-hmm.
In the room. So to join the point that you're making, when we're doing the multiple intelligences piece in the Kemetic Wisdom School, what I'm attempting for us to understand is that we all are gifted, but there are some gifts that have been given to us that we build more than others.
Mm-hmm.
That's our signature. What we have to do is understand how our ancestors thought. One of the things that's tripping us up is that we're not thinking like geniuses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're thinking like fools.
Mm-hmm. And we're not assuming that we are geniuses.
We don't understand that each and every one of us, that's the first thing I told every class I ever had throughout my entire career. I continue to do it to this day. Everybody in this room is a genius. And your purpose in life is to find that genius. Mm-hmm. It's not for you to be fit where the society demands that you work to forget your passion. It's for the society to help you find that and fit you into the society so that you can implement the genius that you have been given by a creative force. Some people call it God, Allah, Yahweh, Jehovah. You call whatever you want.
First frequency, God good.
Hey, it's all there. You call it whatever you want.
Exactly. But it's there, and it's always been there. But the society as a whole tries to keep you from that and make you forget who you are.
They know what would happen if ever you found it.
And they've had many glimpses of that. I mean, you know, think about that movement. Yeah. Think about that movement from 1865 to the Reconstruction. Think about that.
Yeah. The fear that was engendered.
Yeah. That's why they didn't want us to read and be literate. And that's why they didn't want us to have literacy, because they knew.
And I would have done the same thing if I were them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the other thing. We don't understand who we're dealing with. We think that we're looking for fair and square, equality.
Not happening.
No, it didn't happen in the ice.
No.
The ice was not fair to them.
Right.
They are a product of their environment.
Right.
And that's all that you're going to deal with. If your environment is harsh, destructive, you're going to become harsh and destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Your environment can watch your infant die, can freeze right in front of you, or can die of hunger right in front of you, and your environment has no mercy. It just continues to just destroy. Then you're going to pick up those traits.
Mm-hmm. That's axiology, brother.
That's it. You know. So what are we expecting?
Mm-hmm.
You're expecting a palm tree during a snowstorm.
You know what was interesting when the clip that you sent to me to look at about race war, and when the guy, the white supremacist, white fragilist, was talking about we're just here to win, and I don't really think people understand what that. I mean, when they see it, they'll understand it and get it. I hope the psychology and, if you will, the psychopathy, the sociopathy of that winning at any and all costs. There is no morality. There is no barometer. There is no measurement. It does not exist. And, you know, Black folk, particularly on this continent, have to get back to that understanding that our ancestors knew, because they experienced it. Those freed slaves, you know, the Emancipation Proclamation, they know that these people don't care about there is no barometer. There's no such thing as fairness. There's no such thing as compromise. And so when we recognize that, then that's why we are here now, is because they understood that and they took on those traits. You said something in one of our shows that when you're in hell, you got to be a little devilish. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And these this faction of fragilis, they're a cancer. They're detrimental not only to us, they're detrimental to themselves. Look at how they treat each other. They eat their young and their old currently. Their minds are completely they're still frozen. I mean, radically frozen. And we're sitting up asking for a bone, asking for fairness, asking for a seat at the table. No. You have to take that table. You have to take that table. And I really hope the family gets that and understands that. But the only way you're going to be able to do that is by training your brain.
That is it.
You have to train your brain.
Absolutely.
With the knowledge and wisdom and everything that you have currently, and your brain is not trained, you are a victim.
Yeah. And you have to understand that this system isn't stopping you.
No, it's not.
Your belief in the system being able to stop you is what stops you. There are people who are born, Dr. Ray Morgan, brilliant brother, good friend to Dr. Ray Hagen's. Once
I gotta
said,
get him on the show too.
Yeah, it's just there's great people out here, man. Great people. He was, I believe, the Deputy Commissioner for Mental Health for New York State, Dr. Ray Morgan. And I don't know if it was when we were coming back from the annual convention. I don't know if it was there in the airport that he told me this. I don't know if it was during his presentation that he said this. But he said, there are people born in the world to stop you from achieving your goals. And he said, you were born not to let them do it. And that was so profound to me.
Wow. Sheesh. Hell yeah.
That was so profound to me because whenever I come up against anything, anybody, any place, whatever it is, that attempts to stop me from achieving what I want, I make it my business to make sure they don't. And that's what our ancestors' mindset was. When no matter what they experience, and I'm going back to Kush, when they wanted to build the pyramid, and they saw that the mud brick ones were falling apart. They wanted to build a pyramid in order to be able to chart the heavens. So they found a way through Imhotep to cut limestone, to start to build in brick. And no matter how massive, from 2 to 13 tons apiece, over 2.3 million bricks, huge, despite the sand, despite how far they had to get it out of the ground, south of them, and bring it along the Hapi, as heavy as they may have been. Bring them across the sand to place them, and then to bring them up to place them where they needed to be. No matter what they faced, they found a way to build those pyramids. So it's not just human interaction. It's anything. It's education. It's study. Somebody want to be a piano player, but I don't have a piano. If you really wanted to be a piano player, You'd find a way if you really wanted to be. If you allowed a system to tell you, well, I don't have a piano, or I don't have the money for a piano, or I don't know where to go for a piano. Okay, somebody that want to be a piano player, we'll find someone with a piano and say, can I come to your house?
Exactly. Exactly.
It don't have to come into your house.
You know, that reminds me of a true story. One of my stories. That I was, this was back in the day when I was on welfare and living in South Chicago, living with my sister, and I figured out how to not only write and interview people, but I figured out how to get into, you know, a newspaper, a magazine, and I had accomplished an interview with Iman, the supermodel. She was coming out with she was launching her line of cosmetics, and it was going into JCPenney at the time when she officially launched. And I had an interview that day. Well, because of the poverty that I was going through, my phone got shut off. And I remember asking it was Hermine Hartman of Indigo MAGA paper at the time. I asked her, she was only paying me like $76 a month to write this column. I had a column called Faces in High Places. And I remember calling her and asking her, can you front me a month in advance so I can get my phone turned back on so I can do this interview? And she said no. And so I had this phone, you know, this is of course before the internet and all of that stuff. I had this phone that recorded phone conversations that I would use and hook up to, you know, those old tape recorders that you know, they were rectangular in shape, and you push play, record, whatever you put. So I put the plug into the recorder from the phone with the Radio Shack and got this little adapter. And so I was able to record my interviews, and my phone was off. So where I lived, there was a post office. This was back when they had pay phones, because there were no cell phones at this time. And I had a friend who lived on the west side of Chicago, and a brother named Hugh Scott, never forget him. And I asked him, I said, look, I've got this interview that I have to do with Iman at, I don't know, 2 o'clock or whatever. And here's what I want to do. I'm going to get on the bus, and it took 3 hours from where I lived in South Chicago to get up to the west side. Give him the recorder, show him how to set it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call from the post office, and we'll call you, and then have you patch, because his phone had call waiting on it. So he was able, a three-way calling. So he called Iman, and I called him. He patched me in. Swear to God, I did that interview with Iman at the post office on a payphone for an hour, putting quarters in, at doing the interview. And I look back to that level of determination, that level of nothing's going to stop me, because that was the precipice of me doing all of these interviews, getting all of this information. That was part of, back then I didn't see it, but that's part of that genius. The ancestors were teaching me how to circumvent everything. Phone shut off, you're poverty stricken, you got to get on the bus and train for 3 hours there, almost 3 hours back, the total of travel time of 3 hours, and get a phone, a recorder, and an adapter, and have the brother hook up the three-way, and I'm talking to Iman on a payphone in the post office, doing an interview that I still have to this day.
Wow.
And that's why, quote unquote, I'm good at what I do today. That's why I'm able to ask questions to get into the heart of the individual's information, to be able to bring that out and flesh that out. That's why I'm able to set up systems to educate my people, no matter what. I will find a freaking way. I will find a way. And that is what we need. So those emotional, that's why I gravitated toward lecture series on emotional intelligence, because it basically put language and context to what I was doing and have been doing. And it gave me even more structure to be able to focus my neural nets to be able to manifest a particular outcome and objective. And that's what we have to do. We have to have that kind of, I don't give a fuck, I'm going to make it happen some way, somehow. And regardless of how messy it is, because evolution is messy, this is not a chronological fight, this is an evolutionary fight. No matter how messy it gets, I'm going to get to the promised land. And that's the other piece of your soliloquy that you presented in Out of Darkness. From the pyramids to the plantation, from the plantation to the projects, and from the projects to the promised land. That is a series of, in order to do that, that's a series of emotional intelligences that can manifest that reality.
Yes. And it's in each and every one of us.
Absolutely. I never told that story before. Damn it! You have a who's doing the interview now? Wait a minute. I've never told that story.
Well, this is a conversation, brother. This is one of those off-the-cuff conversations.
Yeah, I just thought about that. I'm like, man, you know.
Bro, you said, well, let's record this.
Yeah, because we were talking about the Jim Crow. We started out talking about this incredible interview that we saw on Breakfast Club with Smokey Robinson.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's really how it started, and you know, people can go and look that up on YouTube.
Yeah,
and he was telling his episodic story of how he came to be 76 now. And he was talking about what was going on in the Jim Crow time and what he went through during that time, and having to have the white bus driver go in and get their food because they couldn't get it. Having them go into a restaurant and wait for an hour just for somebody to come over and say, what do you want? And then waiting another hour for them to bring the food and looking at it and saying, you can't eat this. You know. Yeah. That was what he went through, and this cat now is worth $100 million. Yeah. So you understand that it didn't matter what your status of celebrity was during this time, but during the time of this mindset of these ICE people, they don't care, and so you should not either. Circumvent it, find a way, figure it out.
That's the only thing, and let us not look that far back, because the presidency of Barack Obama and the current presidency that we're facing now shows you the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They made President Obama wait 8 years. Mm-hmm. And every time he said or did anything, I heard nothing but a bunch of barking by a bunch of dogs. Mm-hmm. But now, these same people that had so much to say when he was trying to do something for our country, with the president that we have right now, I don't hear the barking of the dogs.
Say it.
I hear the crickets.
Exactly.
So it goes to show you the depth that we have changed, but they have not.
Right. They
are the same, whether it's Alton Sterling or Stephon Clark. You know, yesterday was interesting. I was downtown. Shari and I went downtown. And I stopped off to get something. And as I got off, I saw this crowd marching, Black Lives Matter. Mm. And there were people in the crowd that recognized me. And they said, come join. Mm. And I said, well, you know, my wife is waiting for me, but I'll walk with you. Let's talk a little while. So I walked with them, and it was Black Lives Matter marching because of Stephon Clark and Alton Sterling. Mm-hmm. And I marched with them, like where it was like down in New York, it was Columbus Circle. Mm-hmm. And I know that those that may not be familiar with New York may not be able to imagine it, but it's the Time Warner building now. Mm-hmm. But it's a circular building that goes around. And just to flash back to a story of my childhood, I grew up in that neighborhood. I grew up in the Amsterdam projects. on 63rd Street. This is like 60th Street, by Broadway. Those that are in New York know what I'm talking about. Those that aren't, you may not, but the story is this. The sidewalk is far away from the entrance of the building. So if anybody stepped out of the building, they would have to walk a distance before they got to the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before it became the Time Warner building, it used to be the Coliseum.
Mm.
This Coliseum was where they had all the shows. Right now we have the Jacob Javits Center downtown.
I remember that. I know exactly where that is. I've been to New York. Yeah.
But they have the beauty shows.
Right.
That's where they had the beauty shows, the dog show, the boat show,
yes,
the auto show.
Yes,
Okay.
I know exactly where that is.
59th Street.
Yes.
Okay. So this is where I had gone in. I had gone in because, there's a Whole Foods there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was a young brother, when it was raining, myself and all the other younger brothers would go to the Coliseum when they would have a show. We always brought umbrellas. This is when it was raining. Only when it's raining could we do this. This is the hustle of a young brother. We would go to where the door was. And let's say a man or woman come, a woman is there, and they say, like I would say, I can get you a cab. And or I say, would you like a cab? They say, yeah, I'd like a cab. And because they didn't want to walk out in the rain, right, I would go and I would get the cab. I would come back, and most of the time they were taller than me because I'm a young brother. So I would hold the umbrella up and walk them to the cab. That's how we made money.
Wow.
I remember one time this man gave me $5.
Mm.
Now you got to go back in time when $5 was equivalent probably to about $150 today.
That's right. That's right.
Because I always go by the candy bar. I paid 5 cents. Milky Way, Three Musketeer. We paid 5 cents for a candy bar. How much do you pay now for a candy bar? Upwards of $1, maybe $1.20, sometimes $1.39 for the same candy bar I paid 5 cents for.
Mm-hmm.
I paid a nickel for a slice of pizza, a nickel for a hot dog in the street. How much is a pizza slice now? How much is a hot dog?
Mm-hmm.
Now, multiply that by the amount of money that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll understand what $5 was to a young brother back then.
Mm-hmm.
And what the man gave me $5 for, he said, and this is when I looked this word up. He said, I like your ingenuity.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked that word up because he said to himself, I'm sure he's not out here all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he has an umbrella. He sees that I'm with a woman. And I don't have an umbrella. So this young man's mind must be functioning in a way that he knows that there's a service that he can supply.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember that, but for the most part, sometimes gave me a dime, sometimes a nickel. Keep in mind, a nickel is a candy bar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a nickel is like giving me a
that's
dollar.
$5, man. That, like you said, that was like $150.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
You're a nickel, a dime, and if you were there all day long, your day could end and you could have upwards of maybe $7, $8 without that $5.
Mm-hmm.
You could make from nickel to dime, a couple pennies even.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the subway, we used to have those machines where you could put a penny in and the chiclets would come out.
Mm-hmm.
So you could even buy something for a penny.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
So, but the real story I was telling you was about I marched with them. Sherry called me 9 times. But I had to take that moment to march with them.
Yeah.
I had to take that moment. They're young, and there was different people in that group. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Different cultures. I saw a sign that said Filipinos for Black Lives Matter.
That's right. That's right. That's the thing. We have to, it's a hard conversation for some of the family members to have, but some are unthawing. Some are unthawing.
I'm looking for soldiers, brother.
And it's about that 3 out of 100, my man.
It's about
that 300 out of 100. And some of those 3 out of 100 are not going to be necessarily African American. Let's just keep it real now.
It's a bitter pill to swallow, brother.
It's a hard pill to swallow because we want to be angry. We want reparations, restitution, and resolution. And from the thawed, we want it not from the thawed, from the frozen. It ain't gonna happen. So you look and see who is unthawed, who is unthawing, because all of them, they're in various different stages and transitions of their unthaw.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact, there are people of European descent that despise being born into a system and into a body that they can't get out of. I know this for a fact because I've had several conversations with Europeans who are going through this right now, that are saying, I'm working with Dr. Jacqueline Badalore. We talk about it all the time. She created this thing called, talking about whiteness. She's like, okay, I have to get up every day and I have to, my top of mind is I have to think about how is my whiteness affecting someone else? How am I, just by being present as a white woman, a female, what does that do? And so she creates this, whiteness competency course on how to train our brains, both for the European and for all of us, to be able to create an emotional intelligence on how to desensitize our brains from the normalcy of whiteness, the normalcy of the ice. There are some that are unthawing, and they recognize that, here, this is really interesting. Dr. Robin DiAngelo, who created the white fragility piece, she and I have had conversations that were interesting, in that we talk about the epigenetics, the genetic memory, the axiology, and talk about with Badalore, talk about the anti-miscegenation laws and all the things that created this country before 100 years before the Constitution was written. And they feel, this is interesting, some Europeans that are unthawing, and some Asians that are unthawing, feel victimized for being born into a racist society that, by default of the color of their skin or the lack thereof, that they have received privileges, are treated a particular way, and subsequently see other people being ridiculed, dehumanized, and damaged as a result of. They actually resent the fact that they are born into this system, and they're European, which I thought was an absolutely fascinating conversation. We're going to probably have it, on some upcoming shows and what have you. But there are, when you see some of these Europeans or Eurasians, and don't get me wrong, not all of them are on the up and up, if you will, but there are some that are genuinely unthawing, and they are the ones that are called, quote unquote, the nigger lovers. Let's just keep it real. Kaffir lovers. They are the ones that don't want to be what their ice age axiology has manifested them to be. They are evolving out of and unthawing from the ice. And it's fascinating to see how messy it is for many of them. But many of them are going through the same psychological PTSD that we are going through because they have to can you imagine waking up every day and having not to be, to fight against basically your own nature, fighting against your own nature. And some of them are doing this. And it's a story, a situation that the family has to look at and recognize, because throughout history, we had various different allies that were not children of the sun. And I know that's a messy conversation. And I know some of us are saying, you know, fuck them. I don't want nothing to do with them. I can't wait for them to become extinct. I don't want to ever see, if I never see another European or Eurasian again, I'd be quite happy and okay with that. That's great. But based upon the timeline and the time frame of the evolutionary track, you and I are not going to see that. It is going to happen where they become extinct, but that's not going to happen in our lifetime. So what do? You have to have the emotional intelligence to know and to be able to see and recognize what some of the unthawed look like, so that you can glean that level of information from them. It's like you were telling me many times. It's like, you know, some people want to say, well, Philippe, you should only have Black people on your show. I'm only going to listen to Black people, and you miss out on all of the education and information that was stolen from us, yes, but you miss it because you don't have the emotional intelligence to take back what was yours and then process it through African eyes and an African mind. And so you're lost. You're running to stand still. You're on a treadmill, man. You can know all of you need to know about Kush and Shabaka Stone and all of that. It's not going to help you right now. It's going to help you epigenetically, but you need to get some other information in that might not come from a Dr. Joy DeGruy, a Professor Kaba, or James Small, and so on and so forth. And so that's why I'm like a Black Robin Hood. I take from them and bring it to us and process it for us, so that it helps us to be able to think. It helps us to be able to maneuver. It helps us to be able to circumvent this what Derek Bell calls racial permanence. It helps us to be able to become ingenious and have ingenuity. And that's what we, you know, this school is really all about. You know, yeah, you're gonna get the deep African history and teaching. You're gonna get the cosmic teaching from Ptah and all that, but you're gonna learn how to think. And you're going to learn how to process that thought, to activate in your life, to move you forward and subsequently your people forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just in the story that I told earlier, when I was teaching the high school students, what I taught them was part and parcel of the entire last show that they put on for their parents.
Mm.
They didn't talk about the multiple intelligences.
Mm-hmm.
They did the multiple intelligences.
Good point.
And one of the contributions that we're giving to the Kemetic Wisdom School in looking at academic intelligences and emotional intelligences and personality, such as the 5 minds, is it will allow us to begin to think in a healthier manner, in a more intellectual manner, to be able to digest the work of all the other scholars.
Exactly.
That are in the Kemetic Wisdom School.
Yes.
You can get all that information you want.
Right.
But the thing is, how do you process it? How do you allow your
Yes.
neuron to decipher where that fits within your body? It's like when you're eating a meal. Your body, when it ingests the food, solid or liquid, literally is deciding what part of the food goes to what part of the body. Because everything you eat, some things that you eat, good for your kidneys, some good for your liver, some good for your heart, some's good for the circulation of your blood system. But what is it and who is it that makes that decision once you eat it? It's the fact that your body is natural and it knows what it needs. Mm-hmm. The same is true for our mind. The information that you'll get on economics, the information that you'll get on counseling, the information you get on the calendar system, the information you get on spirituality, history, geography, all of that nourishes various parts of your brain.
Right, right. Remember, it was Wade Nobles who says, it's like when you turn on the light, the dark knows what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key. And once that happens, then we understand how our ancestors were able to build the pyramids and how they were able to do the things that they did. Because they understood nature. They understood that just like their bodies were able to do what it needed to do, the brain can do the same thing. The reason why we study today, the reason why we're in school today, is to pass a test. Mm-hmm. Which has nothing to do with your life. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking about core. Mm-hmm. Tangentially, it decides what school you go to, what job you get, the rest of that. But that's all a scheme to keep you from really realizing why you're learning this information, which is to save your soul. That's the bottom line. So that when your body no longer is functioning and the animation that we call spirit is no longer there, your soul is liberated from this tomb we call a body. See, and it's interesting because we get caught up. I was reading this piece by the great Dr. T.K. Moore, and he does a lot on melanin. And he was talking about, death, and it came at just the right time because of the work I'm doing. And he's talking about death, and he talks about it from an African perspective. And he says that there is no word in Africa for death, not as we use it. There's no such thing as death. All death does is allow the electromagnetic waves that are tuned in your body to move to a higher frequency. He said that's what death is. That the bar is freed. But there's no such thing as death.
That's that first frequency again. There it is. Wow.
Yeah, and we're all going there.
Yeah.
So I tell people, don't form a habit of living because you are going to die.
Right. Right.
It's going to happen. Free yourself from that pressure, and it'll allow you to find yourself. Everybody wants to stay young. You're not going to stay young. You might preserve yourself so that you can live long. You can preserve yourself so that your body can function for you in a healthy manner. But every day that you live, you are getting older. You're not going to avoid that. People say to people who are in their 80s and they really look magnificent, you say, oh, you look great for your age. No, they don't. They look exactly like they're supposed to look. The problem is that your ass is getting old.
Right.
And so your perception of me or the person that's 80 years of age is that they look young for their age. That's not true. And that's again back into the epigenetics of this oppression.
Right.
If you look a certain way at 80, if you're 92 and you're able to function, it's not that you're young. It's that you're healthy. You're doing the right thing. It has nothing to do with how you're supposed to look.
Right.
You look the way you're supposed to look. But we have this concept of age and getting older, and they play on it.
Yep.
Okay, they play on it by selling wrinkle cream, topics for your hair if by chance your hairline is receding or if your hair is thinning. They have ways that you can lose 150 pounds. if you just purchase this product. It's all a hustle. Because if you lived a proper life and ate the proper foods, you would not gain excess weight. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the internal part of us as we are living our lives. And they got to hustle out here for the women and for the men as it relates to all the different things that happens as we move through life and we mature. And they play games on us, and they play games on our head.
No doubt.
And they're making a lot of money doing that. And all the while that we're doing that, we're not enjoying that day. We're not enjoying our lives. And we have to begin.
We're distracted.
Yes, we are distracted away from what we should be doing.
Right.
And this is what we face as a people. They're hustling us. All of us, they're trying to hustle. And it's something that we have to think about.
As you know, we have our inside joke where I call you Smokey Robinson and you call me Barry Gordy. So I just want to say I appreciate you, Smoke.
No doubt, brother Barry Gordy. And what we're developing is Moortown.
Yeah, man.
You know, this is the Moortown. This is another phase of all of this. And that's why you sent me that piece on Smokey Robinson yesterday. Because
right.
Inside thing that we go back and forth with as it relates to what Barry Gordy did.
Yeah.
You know, and like Smokey Robinson, when they said to him, was it in the water of Detroit? You know, is that what made the Temptations and Martha Reeves and the Vandellas and the Aretha Franklins and all the others of that time? And Smokey Robinson said, there were many of us in the neighborhood that were singers, that were dancers, that were performers. He said it wasn't in the water. It was that we had Barry Gordy. That was, and I'm saying this, he didn't say this, but what I'm saying is that he was the pineal gland. He was the control board that understood how to make things happen. And this is the work that you're doing. You're the pineal gland. You are the control board. You are the one that sees how to do this. And the reason why you know how to do this is because you were able to interview Iman.
No doubt. No doubt. That's truth.
Because the chances are is if people had handed you the ability to do that, if that woman had given you your money, if you had a job that you could have paid your phone bill, you might not be as great as you are today.
That's exactly right. And that's truth. That is truth. That's epigenetics. That is truth.
And I often say you find your strength when you find your weakness.
Absolutely.
Because your strength is to strengthen your weakness.
That's right. That's right.
And
the same for you. If you did not have the ingenuity and the pineal gland to be able to say, okay, it's raining out here, let me get an umbrella and go out here and hustle.
That's it.
You wouldn't have gotten that $5 when it only cost 5 cents for a candy bar.
That's right. And this is how I watched my father.
And that changed you in that moment. That changed you genetically. Your DNA changed. You created an epigenetic tag in that moment, as I did that day, 90-degree day in Chicago, trying to get this interview because it was the most important interview of my life at that time.
Absolutely.
Because I knew I wasn't going to make any money from it, but I knew what it was going to do for me later on. I knew that inherently, instinctively. I didn't know how, and that's the thing. How ain't our business? You have to do the work.
That's it. By any means necessary.
By any means necessary, my brother.
And my hustle comes from my father. You know, he was a tailor. And who would go from one cleaners to another to make money. And like I told the story, you know, you got paid back in those days, you got paid for the piece. So if you ironed a pair of pants, that was like 5 cents. If you ironed a jacket, that might be 10 cents. If you ironed an overcoat, that was a certain amount. If you ironed a curtain, that was a certain amount. And so in one cleaners, my father may have worked and maybe made $1.25. Okay, well, my father wanted more. So he'd go to the next cleaner up the block. So within a mile radius, I knew where to find my father in the Amsterdam projects. I knew where to find him. And so I would go from one to another. Say, no, Dad left. Went home. No, my dad didn't go home. He probably went to another cleaner's.
Right. Love
Okay.
it. Love it.
So my father worked in the post office from 12 midnight until 8 in the morning. And then he worked in the tailor shops up until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, where I would go meet him. And then we'd walk home together.
Wow.
So that's my memories of when you want something, you do what you got to do.
Yeah. And you know, I love that story about your dad, because here's the other piece that I think particularly our young people need to get. Because the young people always talk about the hustle and the grind. I got to go out here and hustle for this money. The difference is, are you hustling for money to survive right now? Or are you hustling for the money to thrive and build a future? If you're doing it for the here and the right now, you're playing an end game. You're playing a treadmill. You're running to stand still. You're playing with death. You're playing Russian roulette. What's that Russian roulette with the gun or whatever at your head? Because you're doing it for the here and now. I didn't do that Iman interview for then. I did it for now. Mm-hmm. I projected myself in the future, and I said, at some point, this is going to make me money. Yeah. This is going to change my life.
Yeah. And it made you a better interviewer.
Absolutely.
So is your hustle for the money, or is it to perfect your craft?
Right.
You see,
I love our Thursday morning conversations, Cabo. Damn it. I love our Thursday mornings.
And you know, again, like, the community should know that this was not expected.
No, it never is. We never, we're supposed to be doing digitalonomic stuff with you right now. Is what we're supposed to do.
Exactly. but you see, these.
But I said, you saying something. Let me turn on the recorder, because this is something the family needs to hear.
This is these conversations are the ones that will guide people to their destiny. Mm-hmm. I hope it also guides them to the Kemetic Wisdom School. Mm-hmm. They go to Shock Metaphysics. Mm-hmm. I hope they join the Kemetic Wisdom School, because this is what we are about. Yeah. Taking every moment as a teachable moment, because the most valuable thing we have is our time.
That's right. We do not have waste.
Hey, man, we can make this happen. Yep. I feel this time. Yeah. I feel this time. Yeah. And again, I was talking to Shari, and I was explaining to her. In fact, I think it was after you and I spoke one time. And I was telling her that, like, she has watched all this for the past 37 years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She and I have walked through this together. Mm-hmm. The ups, the downs, the in-betweens, the children, everything, it has been a collective experience. And I used to always tell her, I said, I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's coming. I can't prophesize how it's going to happen, but I can tell you it's happening, and I can feel it. I can feel it coming. And I believe that it doesn't just come when you feel an epiphany. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It happens when you see things happen. That's why I say that prophets are not psychics. They're just good historians. Mm-hmm. And one of the pieces that's on Race War is when I talk about the bookends mm-hmm. of Cristobal Colon and Donald Trump. Okay, the bookends. This is the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Mm-hmm. You had the fall of the Roman Empire. The fall of the Roman Empire was a fall of Eurasian culture and history as it grouped the Greek and the Roman experience. Mm-hmm. That Greek and Roman experience was plundered. It fell. Europe went into a stage of disrepair, and actually Europe became a shithole. I mean, Sincerely, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. Look at the history.
It was worse than ever before.
Yeah.
And then Africans went in and saved them. Africans saved them the first time. The Greek and Roman experience.
Mm-hmm.
They fell, Africans saved them again. When Africans from North Africa went into Europe and brought culture and history back in. Out of that came the Renaissance, which was the Catholic Church at its corruptible best.
Mm-hmm.
But it allowed the scientists that sat at the feet of the Africans to introduce science into the world. That then would lead to Cristobal Colon. Here is Donald Trump. This entire civilization, as we know it, Western civilization, it is going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
However, once again, Africans are going to save it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's going to be the African-American experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think this is what we've been trained for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the Kemetic Wisdom School is more than just a place for us to come for information.
Right.
It's a building block. Like you and I spoke one time about something Dr. John Henry Clark told me about the pyramids. That the pyramids were not just a great technological advancement. The pyramids was the sum total of an entire society coming together and building it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were a baker, you baked for the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a doctor, you healed for the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a tailor, you made clothes for the pyramid. If you were a water carrier, you carried water for the workers. Whatever you did in your life was aimed at that one epic experience. And I've often said that if we could find something that we could dedicate our genius, our own individual geniuses to, that would be like our pyramids. And I think that our pyramid in this civilization is the Kemetic Wisdom School.
Wow. Well,
where everybody's coming with their best.
That would make you Neo and I'm Morpheus.
Yeah, brother.
That's what they call it, metaphysical Morpheus. So you got to be Neo, brother.
Okay.
You got to be Neo. You're the one.
And the ensemble.
Yeah.
Because
what a cast, man. What a cast.
None of us would be anything without each other.
Yeah.
This is an ensemble.
Yeah.
This is an ensemble. This is all of us coming together and bringing our best to make this happen. Yeah. And whatever it is.
Actually, I'm getting ready to at noon my time, 1 o'clock my time, I got to do a second class with Professor James Small today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's on fire.
Dr. Jeffy.
I did 2.5 hours with Dr. J yesterday morning, 7 a.m. Yeah. I've never seen him like this before.
Yeah.
This is our 7th class.
Yeah. This is our time. This is our time. Yeah. This is an anointed time. And this is the time that our community is going to see that this is time. It's time. It's appointed. It's anointed. The stars have crossed. And now there is, in due deliberate speed, what we have to do for our community, for our children, but also for the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is infectious. This is something. This is a viral program that was put into the matrix to destroy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's being done quietly, and it's being done gradually, and all of us are finding our place in this.
Yes. Yes.
And as I marched with the young people and the family yesterday outside of the Coliseum, it brought back memories.
Yeah.
Of the 60s. It's happening from all over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we understand, what it is that we're facing as a people. And by the way, right across the street from this place, what used to be Coliseum, which is now Time Warner, where they were marching, is the Trump International. In fact, I parked right outside the Trump International in order to go where I was going. So we full circle here, man.
There's the bookends, baby. There's the bookends.
That's the bookends. It's time for us to get ourselves together.
That's awesome. We got some digitonomics work to do, brother. So hotep on this conversation.
No doubt about that. And hotep to the family. I hope that you find this, because this was not planned. This was off the cuff. As we say, these are just moments that we catch, that we say something. We say, oh, we need to, just to give this to the community.
Yeah.
These are those moments. These are the spur of the moment conversations. So it's good to talk to you.
Absolutely, Barry. I mean, Smokey.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, man. Together, we're going to make this happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hotep, my brother.
Hotep.